Chapter 22. Handsome Expert. A female voice suddenly rang out from behind. Many male players narcissistically turned around, wondering if they were the ones being called, including Lin Jichen. Of course, it was indeed him they were calling. Wanling's sister, it really is him! Two female players dressed in the attire of the Sword Sect's outer temple approached Lin Jichen. Lin Jichen was also surprised. He hadn't expected to run into Su Wanling, the wealthy lady here. But he didn't have any other thoughts. He and Su Wanling were just business partners. He sold, she paid. Their relationship was very straightforward. Su Wanling had anticipated meeting Lin Jichen. After all, she had seen his letter, which bore the Sword Sect's mark. "Why have you also joined the Tianyan Sword Sect?" Lin Jichen asked curiously. Su Wanling retorted, "Is the Tianyan Sword Sect only for men?" "Of course not, I was just asking." Su Wanling still explained to Lin Jichen, "Our Moonshadow Guild has all sorts of professions, purely based on personal preference. I lean towards swordsmanship, so naturally, I chose the Sword Sect." Lin Jichen nodded, indicating he understood. Feeling there was nothing more to say, he politely excused himself. "I need to go on a quest. Let's chat another time." With that, Lin Jichen hurried off once again. Su Wanling wanted to chat more with Lin Jichen, but just like last time, he was gone in a flash. "This guy, he left before I could finish talking." Su Wanling couldn't help but mutter. "That handsome guy is so cool, Wanling's sister. Even someone as beautiful as you can't sway him. Seems like it's going to be tough for you to chase after him," the woman beside her said with a laugh. Su Wanling rolled her eyes at her and said, "Which eye of yours saw me trying to chase him? You've been staring at his back as he left, and you said he left before you finished speaking. Isn't that trying to chase him?" Su Wanling gave her a knock on the head, annoyed. "I was looking at his Sword Sect clothes. They're different from ours. I just wanted to ask him about it. So it's not that, huh? And here I was, fantasizing about a TV drama of a woman chasing a man. If only your gameplay was as imaginative as that. Stop dawdling and go do your quest. We're only 3 contribution points away from exchanging for the Tianyan Heart Sutra. Many sisters from other sects have already exchanged for their techniques. We're the slowest. We need to hurry up, or the boss will dock our wages if he finds out." Hearing this, the woman shrank her neck in fear, seemingly very afraid of the boss Su Wanling mentioned, and dared not joke any longer, obediently following along. Lin Jichen arrived at the sect's quest distribution point, where a large wooden board was hung with many wooden plaques. Each plaque had writing on it, all listing various sect quests. Since there were no players at the Foundation Establishment realm yet, these plaques only offered Qi Refining Realm quests. The plaques were arranged in layers, from top to bottom, each layer marked with a red sword icon. This icon indicated the difficulty of the quest: easy, normal, hard, very hard, and Hell 5 levels in total. The tasks on the lowest plaques, marked with a single red sword, were the easiest. The higher up, the more swords there were. The topmost layer had the fewest plaques, but the most red swords, a full 5, indicating Hell-level difficulty. Many players were in front of the quest board, all busy trying to earn contribution points to exchange for the Tianyan Heart Sutra. After all, the allure of a full plus 5% boost to combat attributes was not small. They didn't know that Lin Jichen had already learned the Tianyan Heart Sutra without having to do any contribution quests. Lin Jichen looked at the tasks of varying difficulties. The ones at the bottom were the simplest, involving gathering mundane herbs, killing mundane beasts, or helping out in various sect departments. The next layer up was a bit more challenging, requiring the hunting of Qi Refining Realm beasts, gathering spirit herbs in areas where beasts roamed, or doing some longer errand tasks. The difficulty increased the further up he looked. Lin Jichen originally just wanted to find a hard task and get it over with. But when he saw the top layer of tasks, he took down a special task plaque marked with 5 red swords. A Hell quest. Help the Tianyan Sword Sect retrieve the lost secret technique. Task introduction. A Qi refining realm disciple of the sword sect, Zhou Hao, was killed while out, and the secret technique he carried was stolen. Please avenge Zhang Hai and retrieve the lost secret technique. Task reward: 100 lower-grade spirit stones, 100 sect contribution points, was 1 high-grade gathering, Qi pill, plus 1 spirit-grade martial arts technique, plus 1 piece of spirit-grade equipment. Task warning: this task is extremely dangerous, and the perpetrator is currently unknown. It is suspected that the culprit may be a late-stage Qi-refining independent cultivator. Disciples with low cultivation are advised to choose carefully. No one dared to take on this task at the moment. After all, the average player hadn't even reached the initial stage of Qi refining, and were still at the mortal level. Moreover, the task warning mentioned an opponent at the late stage of Qi refining who would dare to take on such a task. Furthermore, without any information on the opponent or location, it was a task without a starting point. The sect rules stated that to avoid task duplication, each disciple could only take on 1 task at a time. Only after completion or abandonment could they take on another. Thus, this task plaque with its rich rewards could only hang there, basking in the sun. After Lin Jichen took down the plaque, many players saw it and began to mock. What's this kid thinking, taking on this task? He's joking, right? The task warning says the opponent is at the late stage of Qi refining. Is he going to use his head to accept it? Exactly. Taking it now is purely seeking death. I bet this guy is just showing off. Just watch. He'll put it back soon. The chatter of the crowd did not disrupt Lin Jichen's plan. He neither held the plaque hesitantly nor put it back in its place, but instead handed it directly to the NPC disciple beside him for registration. Junior brother, are you really going to take on this task? It's extremely dangerous. I advise you to wait until you're at the middle or late stage of Qi refining for better safety, the NPC disciple kindly advised, his attitude respectful and even reverent. The other players looked on in astonishment. This NPC was at the Foundation establishment realm. He was usually arrogant towards these new disciples, barely giving them a second glance. He didn't care what task anyone took, just registered it, unconcerned with what you chose or your life and death, and certainly wouldn't kindly advise you. Yet, he was so attentive to Lin Jichen, treating him as if he were an elder, overly humble. What was going on? From the conversation just now, it was clear that Lin Jichen was also just a Qi-refining novice. The NPC was male, so it couldn't be because Lin Jichen was handsome that he was treated so well, right? Could it be a man-to-man thing? The kind that likes swordplay? People speculated wildly. Only Lin Jichen himself knew that these outer temple NPC disciples were not drawn to his looks or cultivation level. It was because of the inner temple disciples' clothes he wore. Chapter 23. Disciples of the inner temple hold a far higher status within the sect compared to those of the outer temple and the branch temples. No matter how advanced an outer temple disciple's cultivation is, it's of no consequence in front of an inner temple disciple. Even branch temple disciples must show utmost respect when facing those from the inner temple. Luckily, they didn't know that Lin Jichen was also the sect master's closed-door disciple. Otherwise, they'd probably treat him with the reverence due to a father. Faced with the well-intentioned warnings of the NPC disciples, Lin Jichen remained resolute. Brother, I appreciate your concern. Just go ahead and register me. All right then. All I can do is wish you a smooth mission and urge you to be careful in all things. Thank you. After retrieving his mission token and offering a brief thanks, Lin Jichen turned and left. Exiting the sect's mountain gate, he headed straight for the teleportation array. Using the sect's teleportation array required payment in spirit stones, the amount varying with distance. But even the smallest fee was more than most players were willing to spend. Players with spirit stones were few and far between, and none were eager to part with them for this purpose. Everyone relied on their legs for missions, no matter the distance, including guild players. In the early stages of the game, spirit stones were scarce. Now, many wealthy individuals on the black market were buying up spirit stones, with prices soaring 7 or 8 times in a single day. Almost all guilds initially failed to realize that spirit stones were the main currency, foolishly hoarding coins instead. Only after amassing a pile of coins did they discover they had no significant use for them, except for purchasing mundane items. They'd been duped by the game. Lin Jichen approached the teleportation array. The disciple guarding it asked cheerfully where he wished to go. Lin Jichen pointed to the center of the map of Muxian province, to the largest city icon, Fengqu City. It will cost 5 lower-grade spirit stones. Lin Jichen, without hesitation, handed over 5 spirit stones and stepped into the teleportation array. The array shimmered with light and shadow. In the next second, he appeared outside Fengqu City. A vast, ancient city loomed before him, its 100-jang-high walls stretching like a slumbering dragon. Impenetrable as a fortress, its towers and pavilions exuded grandeur. Each province had only one main city, and for Muxian province, it was Fengqu City. Lin Jichen had spent time in Muxian province in his past life, so the majestic sprawl of Fengqu City was a familiar sight. Many cultivators flew overhead, descending one after another at the city gates. Despite Fengqu City being a mundane city, its ruler's background and power were not to be underestimated. Each province's city was governed by its own royal dynasty, and these were no ordinary rulers. Each had powerful cultivators as their backbone. Their strength and heritage could even rival that of the great sects. Upon entering the main city, cultivators were forbidden from flying. It was the law. Those who dared to break it faced light punishment, such as a few days' detention and a fine in spirit stones, or severe punishment, such as the abolition of their cultivation and years of imprisonment. Upon entering the city, each person had to pay 2 spirit stones as an entry fee. After paying the fee, Lin Jichen walked into Fengqu City. Shops lined the streets, and towering pavilions reached for the sky. The rumble of carriages and the ceaseless flow of pedestrians created an endless stream. It reminded Lin Jichen of a passage he had once read. Observers marvel at the dense dwellings, the abundance of boats and carriages, and the overflowing wealth of merchants, all expressing admiration and longing to have lived in such times and witnessed such scenes. This was meant to praise the prosperity of ancient cities during China's Song dynasty, but it was equally fitting here. Though many cultivators resided in Fengqu City, the majority were still mortals. After all, only a few possessed the talent to step onto the path of immortality. Most people were of ordinary aptitude. As long as the mortals in the city followed the dynasty's rules, lived honestly, and paid taxes on time, they could enjoy the dynasty's protection and need not fear being bullied by cultivators. Thus, a harmonious coexistence of mortals and cultivators was achieved. Walking through the city he had visited countless times before, Lin Jichen felt a strong sense of belonging, as if he truly were a part of this world. The evening sun cast a hazy, poetic glow over the red bricks and green tiles, adding a touch of obscurity to the bustling capital city of Fengqu. Lin Jichen hadn't forgotten the purpose of his visit. He walked through the city to the most bustling commercial district. There stood a building with green tiles and red eaves, ornate flying corners, and a gilded signboard that read, "Drunken Immortal Pavilion." It was the largest and most famous tavern in Fengqu City. Lin Jichen was here for a reason, and certainly not for dining. Stepping inside, the welcoming attendant immediately came forward with politeness. Recognizing Lin Jichen's attire, the experienced attendant flattered him. "Ah, a celestial from Tianyan Sword Sect graces us with his presence. Esteemed guest, please come in. May I ask if you are here to stay or to dine?" "To dine. Find me a second-floor seat by the window," Lin Jichen replied. "Right away. Please follow me, Celestial." The attendant led Lin Jichen upstairs to the even more elegantly decorated second floor. Lin Jichen chose a window seat, ordered a pot of wine, and quietly began to sip at his table. Don't underestimate the food and drink at Drunken Immortal Pavilion. They're not just for satisfying hunger and thirst. Many of the dishes here are made from ingredients sourced from demonic or spirit beasts, not ordinary poultry, and offer special benefits. Even the drinks are extraordinary. The pot of wine Lin Jichen ordered, called Jade Ice Brew, could increase strength and defense by 2 points for an hour after consumption. But this pot of wine wasn't cheap, costing 3 spirit stones beyond the reach of ordinary folk. There were even better dishes and drinks that offered more exaggerated attribute boosts, but their prices were exorbitant, and Lin Jichen couldn't afford them yet. If it weren't necessary to order something to secure a seat, he wouldn't be willing to spend the money, not even on the cheapest item. Lin Jichen sat patiently, tasting the fine wine, but his eyes were fixed on the time. As the sunset began to fade and evening approached, the tavern grew busier and more lively. Musicians played flutes and pipes, guests clinked cups and raised jugs, creating a boisterous scene reminiscent of a bustling riverside gathering. At the peak of the tavern's business, a thin, scholarly-looking man walked in. He took a seat on a small platform in the hall and began to entertain the guests of Drunken Immortal Pavilion with storytelling. The thin man did more than just tell stories. He also shared recent oddities and amusing events from Mushan province. For instance, the sect master of Basalt Taoist Temple, Master Qingmu, has recently broken through to the divine transformation realm. Basalt Taoist Temple's strength has risen yet again. The Fairy of the 100 Flowers from the Polar Sky Valley and the Great Elder of the Red Sun sect have joyously tied the knot, forming a powerful alliance. Yesterday, the Golden Saber sect was slaughtered, falling victim to a demonic sect's massacre. Just the other day, Tianyin Temple recruited an exceptionally talented female disciple. Abbot Jiwan made an exception to take her in, making her the first female disciple of Tianyin Temple, and so on. Besides these significant events that captivated everyone, there were also many recent rumors, such as the son of the war god sect master, Zhou Hao, lusted after beauty and secretly dallied with an elder's concubine. When discovered, the elder left the sect in a rage. Sect master Hai Wugi of the One Saber sect, addicted to gambling, lost everything yesterday, even his pants, and ended up running naked through the streets. A disciple of Thunder Palace, Jiang Ximing, was so bold as to become a flower thief, sneaking out of the sect daily to force himself on defenseless mortal women. After being caught by his sect, he was punished by castration. And so forth. All these stories, big and small, could be heard from his lips. Chapter 24. This man seemed to know everything. No news could escape his eyes. And don't think these stories are made up by the storyteller. They're all true. He's an information merchant NPC from Tale of Immortal, akin to a real-life journalist. Knowing all the recent events, he'd go to the main city's largest tavern every day to share stories and earn tips. Lin Jichen was here to find news about Zhang Hai's murder. He listened patiently and finally, he got what he was waiting for. A qi-refining realm disciple of the Tianyin sword sect, Zhang Hai, was killed while gaining experience outside. The murderer is a late-stage qi-refining loose cultivator named Zhou Hao, a ruthless and cruel man from the demonic path. Hearing this, Lin Jichen felt relieved. It was just a late-stage qi-refining cultivator, and a loose one at that, so it shouldn't be a big problem. The man continued with other news, and Lin Jichen didn't interrupt, continuing to drink and listen. An hour later, the man finished, happily took his reward, and left. Lin Jichen watched him leave the tavern, then quickly settled his bill and followed. "Excuse me, I'd like to purchase some information," the skinny man asked with a grin. "Looking to buy information? No problem. I'm Li Si. That's my business. But it depends on whether you can afford it. What do you want to know?" "Where is Zhou Hao?" "That information isn't too expensive. 5 low-grade spirit stones will do," Li Si said, holding out his hand with a greedy smile. Lin Jichen handed over the spirit stones without hesitation. Zhou Hao is a lecher and often frequents the willow and flower markets of Fengqu City. You can look for him there, Li Si revealed. Thanks. Lin Jichen got the information and turned to leave. But unexpectedly, Li Si called out to him. There's another piece of information that's very important to you, but it'll cost another 5 spirit stones, depending on whether you're willing to pay. Without hesitation, Lin Jichen paid another 5 spirit stones, and Li Si happily accepted them. Seeing as you have a familiar face, I'll give you a tip. Although Zhou Hao is just a late-stage qi-refining loose cultivator, he has an older brother named Zhou Shen, a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator. Be careful. Lin Jichen's eyes flickered. It was good that he bought this information, or he might have suffered a great loss. Thanks, Lin Jichen said simply, and left the drunken immortal tavern. After leaving the tavern, Lin Jichen hurried to the largest pleasure house in Fengqu City, the Autumn Moon Pavilion. This is where Tale of Immortal truly shines. The high-class brothels in Tale of Immortal are available for players to enjoy. As long as you're willing to pay, you can spend a wonderful night with the ladies there. And with a 100% virtual experience, it's no different from the real thing. Of course, aside from NPCs who voluntarily join you, others won't, even if you defeat or kill them, unless their affection level towards you reaches over 80. Players can't do the same in the game, even if they're married. This is to prevent the sale of virtual services, which would violate real-world laws. But with NPCs, no one cares, and no country's laws apply, because everyone thinks it's just data. This feature has led to a surge of LSP players buying the game just to experience the brothels. Some even spend all their time there, not really for the game itself. And it's said that since then, real-world cases of prostitution have decreased, as LSPs flock to Tale of Immortal. Although the brothel girls in the game are average-looking, they're still prettier than most streetwalkers in reality. Plus, there's no risk of disease. Most importantly, in Tale of Immortal, you don't have to worry about the police. It's like playing with a toy at home. No one can say anything about it. Later on, this led to a sharp decline in global prostitution cases, and even the number of AIDS patients dropped dramatically. But that's a story for another time. Lin Jichen had no interest in experiencing the Autumn Moon Pavilion. He had a sense of mental purity. He didn't care for women who didn't respect themselves, not even if they were heavenly immortals. Moreover, the women who ended up in brothels were rarely attractive. Even if there were beautiful brothel women, they'd have been claimed by royalty or powerful cultivators for dual cultivation, or even as cauldrons, leaving none for ordinary people. If Lin Jichen hadn't needed to identify Zhou Hao, he wouldn't have wanted to set foot in a brothel. But to find the man, he had to sacrifice his first time. Don't misunderstand. It was his first time visiting a brothel. To be cautious, Lin Jichen changed out of his sword sect attire into coarse linen clothes. But even then, his appearance caused a stir throughout the brothel. The girls gazed at Lin Jichen as if he were the peerless gentleman from romantic tales come to life. With his transcendent aura, he was irresistible even to someone like Leng Feiyan, a goddess among women, let alone these ordinary brothel girls. When the girls came to their senses, they swarmed him like bees to honey, surrounding him. It was so extreme that even the women servicing clients came out to join the commotion, filling the place with their silhouettes. The sight of the girls waving their handkerchiefs at Lin Jichen was unforgettable for all the male patrons. The year the gentleman entered Autumn Pavilion in coarse linen attire, the entire house beckoned. It would be hard for the Autumn Moon Pavilion to find another who could cause such a sensation. The girls seemed enchanted, clamoring for Lin Jichen to choose them for a night of revelry. Most of them even offered to waive the fee, some willing to pay him instead. This left the other male patrons feeling inadequate, envious, and jealous. Lin Jichen, the guest, not only didn't take advantage of the girls, but was instead thoroughly fawned over by them, much to his bemusement. Damn it! Leaving me halfway through, ruining my mood. Do you want to die? At that moment, a shouting voice came from upstairs, and a bare-chested man emerged from a room. Hearing the man refer to himself as Grandpa Zhou, Lin Jichen inquired about his name with the madam. The madam told Lin Jichen that he was a regular named Zhou Hao. Lin Jichen was certain this had to be Zhou Hao, unless he was unlucky enough to encounter someone with the same name, which was highly improbable. After confirming the man's identity, Lin Jichen didn't alert him. He memorized the man's appearance, pushed through the circle of girls, and fled the brothel as if escaping. The other male patrons thought Lin Jichen was scared off by the girls' enthusiasm and laughed heartily. In reality, Lin Jichen was just avoiding a fight in the city, which would attract the attention of the royal dynasty's guards and turn him into a wanted man. So Lin Jichen left the brothel and found an inconspicuous corner to patiently wait. Patience pays off, and after half a minute, Zhou Hao finally finished his business, swaggered out of the brothel, and hummed a tune as he headed out of the city. Lin Jichen didn't see anyone else with him. It seemed his brother Zhou Shen wasn't there. Lin Jichen immediately changed back into his sword sect clothes and followed behind. Zhou Hao was cautious, seemingly afraid of being discovered. He was worried because he had killed a disciple of the Tianyan sword sect and feared being hunted down by their members. He should have been laying low and not come into the city, but his lust got the better of him, and he couldn't resist sneaking into the autumn moon pavilion for pleasure before slipping away into the night. Zhou Hao thought he wouldn't be noticed this way, unaware that a killer in the dark had already set his sights on him. Chapter 25. Leaving Fengqu City behind, Zhou Hao made his way towards the mountains outside the city. The night was thick, with only the moonlight above casting a faint glow. The forest was tranquil, but as Zhou Hao walked, he sensed something amiss and quickened his pace. No matter how fast he moved, footsteps seemed to follow him, growing ever closer. Zhou Hao stopped and stood in the woods, summoning his thunder blade and turning around warily. He shouted, "Who's there?" Lin Jichen emerged from behind the trees. "The one who's after your life." Seeing Lin Jichen's Tianyan sword sect attire, Zhou Hao's heart skipped a beat, fearing that the sect had sent a large force after him. But looking around, he realized it was just Lin Jichen alone, and sensed that he was merely a novice at the initial stage of qi refining. So it's just a nobody. You think being a disciple of the Tianyan sword sect gives you the right to seek revenge. Looks like you're tired of living. With those words, Lin Jichen was even more certain he had found his target. Zhou Hao made the first move, fearing Lin Jichen had backup on the way and wanting to finish him quickly and escape. Zhou Hao charged with lightning speed, his muscles taut, his blade flashing white as it slashed towards Lin Jichen. Lin Jichen was not unarmed. He held a crimson sword in his hand. As Zhou Hao's blade came down, Lin Jichen calmly stepped aside. He easily dodged Zhou Hao's attack, proving his speed was superior even to this later stage qi refining cultivator. Zhou Hao was taken aback but persisted, bending forward and using the momentum of his previous attack to swing his blade back around. The blade traced a half-moon arc in the air, the thunder blade approaching again with a chilling intent. This time Lin Jichen didn't dodge, but raised his crimson cloud sword to meet the blade. The clash of metal sparked in the night. Zhou Hao was no match for Lin Jichen's strength and stumbled backward, disbelief in his eyes. "This can't be. You're just at the initial stage of qi refining. How can you have such formidable strength?" "It's not that I'm too strong. It's that you're too weak," Lin Jichen taunted. Enraged, Zhou Hao held nothing back, channeling his spiritual energy into the thunder blade. The blade glinted with a hunting light, and a layer of crimson energy enveloped it. Wild blade slash! A fierce and powerful blood-red light cut through the air, flashing past in the moonlit forest. Just as the blade was about to reach Lin Jichen, a semi-transparent shield appeared in front of him. Clang! The blade struck the shield, which dissipated, and the attack was neutralized. Lin Jichen remained unscathed. "This spirit evasion skill is really handy," Lin Jichen muttered to himself, the shield being a feature of the gathering spirit jade pendant given to him by Nangong Yue. However, the spirit shield skill required precise timing to be effective. Lin Jichen had just perfectly timed his first attempt at using the skill, successfully blocking the wild blade slash. Zhou Hao was startled. then quickly surmised that Lin Jichen must possess a defensive magic treasure, greed flashing in his eyes. I didn't expect you to have so many treasures. Seems like you're favored by your sect. Hand over your belongings, and I might spare your life. Lin Jichen looked at him as if he were a fool. Who gave you such courage? Then leave your life behind. Zhou Hao wasted no more words and swung his blade again. The thunderblade moved through the air in an impenetrable flurry, the fierce wind stirring up leaves in the forest. Lin Jichen, curious about his own defense capabilities, deliberately didn't dodge, allowing Zhou Hao to seize the opportunity and strike his arm. Miss! Zhou Hao's blade froze in midair, his eyes filled with disbelief. His attack hadn't even torn Lin Jichen's clothes, let alone left a mark. This is impossible. You're just at the initial stage of chi refining. I don't believe it. Zhou Hao roared in frustration and swung his wind blade technique again, the blade light flashing continuously against Lin Jichen. Lin Jichen let him strike, protecting only his vital areas to avoid critical damage. Lin Jichen blocked Zhou Hao's blade with his arms and back. Miss! 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 The more Zhou Hao slashed, the more panicked he became, realizing he couldn't breach Lin Jichen's defenses. Suddenly, the thought of fleeing crossed his mind. Zhou Hao was truly speechless. Wasn't this kid a sword cultivator? Weren't sword cultivators supposed to focus on offensive damage? Why did this one seem to specialize in defense like a monk? Zhou Hao lost his will to fight and feigned another attack, but his body swiftly retreated. Hey, you've been hacking away at me for so long, and now you want to run? Wishful thinking, Lin Jichen chuckled, no longer toying with him. He raised his crimson cloud sword, and with a flick, a sword shadow slashed across Zhou Hao's shoulder. Blood seeped from Zhou Hao's shoulder, quickly soaking his clothes. 90! A casual strike drew blood, and Lin Jichen saw how weak his opponent was. Scatter Cultivator, Zhou Hao. Profession, Blade Cultivator. Realm, Late Chi Refining. Vitality, 2460, 2550. Strength, 32. Mental Power, 30. Defense, 28. Speed, 36. Equipment, Spirit Grade, Thunder Blade. Blade Technique, Wind Blade Technique, Minor Achievement. Martial Arts Technique, Wild Blade Slash, Beginner. Movement Technique, Miss-Piercing Charge, Minor Achievement. Seeing these attributes, Lin Jichen couldn't help but sigh at the weakness. Even at the late stage of chi refining, the opponent's stats were so low, while Lin Jichen's strength at the initial stage already crushed his opponent. Player, Lin Jichen. Profession, Sword Cultivator. Realm, Initial Chi Refining. Vitality, 2300, 2300. Mana, 2100, 2100. Strength, 37. Mental Power, 22. Defense, 48. Speed, 42. Critical Hit, 7. Heart Guard, 5. Sword Technique. Aptitude, plus 5%. Movement. Technique, Phantom Step. Beginner, 0%. Heart. Technique, Tianyan Heart. Sutra, Beginner, 0%. Equipment, Spirit. Sword Sect Attire, Spirit. Crimson Cloud Sword, Spirit. Gathering Spirit. Jade Pendant, Spirit. Storage Ring. With the 5% combat attribute bonus from the Tianyan Heart Sutra, Lin Jichen's combat stats were even stronger. And this was just his initial stage attributes. The opponent was already at the later stage. Scatter cultivators were just that, lacking in heritage and sect resources. No wonder they were so weak. The only thing Zhou Hao had that Lin Jichen hadn't learned yet were the techniques and spirit skills. In Tale of Immortal, skills in the early stages were broadly categorized into 5 types. Heart techniques and movement techniques were self-explanatory. Then there were the core techniques of the profession, like blade techniques for blade cultivators and sword techniques for sword cultivators. Beyond that, there were martial arts techniques, spirit skills, ultimate techniques, and supernatural powers. Martial arts techniques were minor skills, while spirit skills were major moves, only learnable after foundation establishment. Ultimate techniques and supernatural powers were even more powerful and required higher qualifications. Currently, chi refining players could only learn martial arts techniques, with spirit skills still out of reach. After being struck by a sword, Zhou Hao's composure vanished. Lin Jichen's onslaught continued, and Zhou Hao could only brace himself to fight back. In a few breaths, Zhou Hao had several more sword wounds, one of which was on his chest, triggering a critical hit and causing his health to drop by several hundred points. Chapter 26. Zhou Hao, despite several attempts to counterattack, found his efforts futile against Lin Jichen, who didn't even bother to dodge. The blade struck him without eliciting any reaction. Having lost all will to fight, Zhou Hao no longer wished to engage with Lin Jichen. After blocking another of Lin Jichen's swords, he immediately executed a movement technique. Piercing mischarge! Zhou Hao's speed surged, darting forward several meters before swiftly fleeing. Running? You're definitely not getting away. Lin Jichen also employed the phantom step movement technique. A mere afterimage streaked by, and he quickly caught up to Zhou Hao. Zhou Hao didn't even notice until Lin Jichen's sword pierced through the back of his neck, the intense pain causing him to tumble to the ground. Critical hit, 300. With a base damage of 90, a critical hit dealing double damage, and an additional 70 points from the critical, plus the Crimson Cloud Sword's extra 50 points of damage every 3 strikes, Zhou Hao's vitality bar dropped to less than half. The total damage was precisely 300 points. Senior, I was blind to your greatness. I concede. Please show mercy and spare my life. Zhou Hao, bloodied, lay in a pool of his own blood, begging Lin Jichen for mercy. I might spare you, Lin Jichen said, standing over Zhou Hao with his sword, giving him a glimmer of hope for survival. Thank you, Senior. Your kindness is immense. But Lin Jichen then asked, I heard you have a brother. Tell me where he is, and I'll let you go. Zhou Hao didn't know why Lin Jichen was looking for his brother, but in order to avoid death, he had no choice but to compromise. My brother is at... Before Zhou Hao could finish, Lin Jichen's eyelids twitched, sensing danger from behind. He immediately bent down and dodged. A blade aura, many times thicker than Zhou Hao's thunder blade, passed through the spot where Lin Jichen had just been. After Lin Jichen dodged, the blade aura collided with the trees in the forest, instantly severing a fan-shaped area of trees at their trunks. Lin Jichen frowned and stared intently in the direction behind him. A burly figure emerged from the woods, looking very much like Zhou Hao, but with a much more formidable aura. Seeing this person, Zhou Hao was overjoyed. Brother, save me, I'm being hunted. Zhou Hao's demeanor changed completely at this moment, and he sneered at Lin Jichen. Kid, you're unlucky to run into my brother. For the sword marks you left on me, I'll make you pay 100-fold and chop you into pieces. Lin Jichen ignored his taunts and carefully observed the man before him. He recognized at a glance that the man's aura was that of someone in the Foundation establishment realm. Zhou Shen stepped forward, seemingly not taking Lin Jichen seriously at all, and instead began to scold Zhou Hao. I told you, with all the attention lately, you should have stayed put in the mountains and not come out. You never listen. If I hadn't noticed you were gone and specifically came looking for you, you'd be dead by now. Zhou Hao admitted his mistake. Brother, it's my fault. I'll listen to you this time and won't come out again. Please, avenge me first. I've been beaten so badly. Only then did Zhou Shen turn his attention to Lin Jichen, and upon discovering that Lin Jichen was only at the initial stage of qi refining, he was filled with mockery. You can't even beat a kid at the initial stage of qi refining. Don't call yourself my brother Zhou Shen when you go out. Zhou Hao protested. Brother, it's not my fault. This kid has treasures on him. I couldn't break through his defense. Plus, his strength is far beyond ordinary people. I'm no match for him. Hearing that Lin Jichen had treasures, Zhou Shen's eyes lit up, and he commanded Lin Jichen, hand over everything you have, and I might consider leaving you a whole corpse to make your departure less painful. Otherwise, you'll wish you were dead. Lin Jichen did not comply. Seeing Zhou Hao getting up and taking out an elixir to heal, he simply thrust his sword forward. Zhou Hao couldn't believe Lin Jichen would dare to attack him, and, caught off guard, was struck in the neck by Lin Jichen's sword, blood spurting like a fountain. Critical, 300. Zhou Hao let out a painful scream and fell back to the ground, the elixir he had taken out scattering everywhere. Zhou Shen, seeing Lin Jichen's blatant disregard for him, roared, "You're courting death!" With that, Zhou Shen's figure vanished from the spot like a ghost. Then a sound of tearing air followed. Swoosh! Zhou Shen had somehow appeared in front of Lin Jichen, his black, oddly shaped broadsword slashing down on Lin Jichen's shoulder. Lin Jichen couldn't dodge in time and took a solid hit. This time the defense was breached, his clothes torn open, and a deep gash left on his shoulder, blood flowing out. 220. Lin Jichen also learned his opponent's information from this. Scatter Cultivator, Zhou Shen. Profession, Blade Cultivator. Realm, initial stage of Foundation establishment. Vitality, 5300. Strength, 70. Mental power, 40. Defense, 55. Speed, 50. Critical, 6. Equipment, Spirit Grade. Snow-cutting blade, Spirit Grade. 100 refined ring, Spirit Grade. Rhinoceros belt. Blade technique, Broad Moon Blade technique. Minor achievement. Martial arts technique. Soul cleaving slash, minor achievement. Spirit skill, 100 fierce flame, slash, beginner. Movement technique, shadow splitting step, minor achievement. This one was going to be much harder to deal with than Zhou Hao. Before Lin Jichen could counterattack, Zhou Shen's offensive came again. Lin Jichen had no choice but to engage in battle, and in an instant, two figures intertwined in the woods. The sound of swords and blades clashing rang out. Relying on his ample combat experience, Lin Jichen managed to block all of Zhou Hao's blades. Although Zhou Shen was faster, Lin Jichen's extensive combat experience allowed him to anticipate the opponent's moves and parry in advance. Seeing his offensive thwarted by Lin Jichen, Zhou Shen felt frustrated and humiliated. He, a cultivator of the Foundation establishment realm, had yet to take down a mere initial stage chi refining youngster. Zhou Shen, feeling insulted, lost all patience. The snow-cutting blade in his hand flashed with light, its speed incredibly fast. Soul-cleaving slash! Lin Jichen failed to dodge and was struck in the chest. 300. The blade hit a weak spot, significantly reducing Lin Jichen's vitality bar. Lin Jichen regretted using the Spirit Shield skill recklessly. Otherwise, he could have blocked the slash with it. The cooldown for Spirit Shield was 15 minutes, still a long way off. However, the cooldown for Phantom Step was only 10 seconds, and it had already reset. He immediately used Phantom Step to distance himself from Zhou Shen. Zhou Shen would not let Lin Jichen escape, and immediately employed his own movement technique. Shadow-splitting step. Suddenly, 3 Zhou Shens appeared, surrounding Lin Jichen from 3 sides. 2 of the Zhou Shens were mere illusions. Moreover, their speed was much faster than Lin Jichen's. Lin Jichen, seeing the 3 simultaneous clones, remained unflustered. After a brief discernment, the Crimson Cloud sword thrust forcefully at the middle Zhou Shen. Zhou Shen didn't expect Lin Jichen to be so decisive and accurate in finding his true body. Caught off guard, his chest was struck squarely by the Crimson Cloud sword. Critical. 55. Armor break effect triggered, lasting 5 seconds. Lin Jichen was delighted. Armor break was a great thing, having the opponent's defense. There was no better time to strike. Lin Jichen leaned forward, sword pressing down, body spinning backward, sword light flickering, and Zhou Shen's chest was struck by the sword again. 110. After being injured twice in a row, Zhou Shen was furious and felt deeply humiliated. He maneuvered his blade to deflect Lin Jichen's Crimson Cloud sword, while the spiritual power within him surged, wielding the blade several times faster than before. The scene was filled with countless blade shadows, forming a high-speed slashing array, with sounds of blades tearing through the air echoing in the woods. Broad Moon Blade technique. Although Lin Jichen was fully defending with his sword, the attribute suppression was too much, and he kept getting struck. Lin Jichen was also frustrated. He was only at the initial stage of chi refining, and had run into a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator. If only he had reached the middle stage of qi refining, he wouldn't be so passive. He had planned to find out Zhou Shen's whereabouts, and then, when he was at a higher realm, go and eliminate Zhou Shen for good. But he hadn't expected to encounter Zhou Shen so soon. Chapter 27. Crossing an entire major realm, without any sword techniques, armed with only a movement technique and the spirit shield from his jade pendant, which was still on cooldown. Lin Jichen found himself in a frustratingly tight spot. It's tough to cook without rice, as the saying goes. His vitality had already dropped by a third. At this rate, he was bound to meet his demise. Death was not an option for Lin Jichen. Although in the current state of the game, players could be reborn after death, losing some cultivation and equipment at worst, Lin Jichen was different. His unique talent dictated that with each death, his innate attributes would decrease by 10%. That was something Lin Jichen could never accept. After such a fortuitous rebirth, he was determined to keep his streak of being the lucky one. Think he'd die? Not a chance. Suddenly, Lin Jichen had an elixir in his hand. Mysterious grade Purple Jade Elixir. Increases all combat attributes by 30 points for 5 minutes, and instantly restores 3,000 points of vitality if not in combat. This was an elixir given to him by Leng Feiyan, which he had been too reluctant to consume until now. For the sake of survival, Lin Jichen had to rely on it. Swallowing the Purple Jade Elixir, he felt his body rapidly heating up, his qi surging, and warm currents flowing through him. He felt as if he was brimming with strength. Now his attributes had soared. Strength to 67 points, and defense breaking through to 81 points. 81 points, Zhou Shen's strength was only at 70 points. What did this imply? Lin Jichen gave Zhou Shen a sly smile. Zhou Shen, clueless, thought Lin Jichen had been beaten silly and sneered continuously. To be able to laugh in the face of death, let's see if you can still laugh on your way to the underworld, Zhou Shen said, before continuing his attack with the broad moon blade technique. This time, however, Lin Jichen didn't bother to block. Just like his previous fight with Zhou Hao, he let Zhou Shen's blade strike him. Miss! What? Zhou Shen was shocked and, disbelieving, struck again with his blade, only to miss once more. Realizing the problem must lie with the pill Lin Jichen had just consumed, Zhou Shen knew it was no ordinary elixir. With an elixir that can block my attacks, this kid must have many treasures on him, Zhou Shen, worldly and experienced, mocked. That elixir must have a time limit. Just wait until its effects wear off, and you'll meet your end. Lin Jichen nodded in agreement. You're right. My elixir does have a time limit. Zhou Shen felt smug, about to speak, when Lin Jichen added, So, all I need to do is kill you before it runs out, right? Zhou Shen's eyelid twitched as Lin Jichen's sword came at him. With all attributes increased by 30, Lin Jichen was like a new man, his speed now unmatched by Zhou Shen. Zhou Shen didn't even see Lin Jichen's sword strike, and in his unguarded state, his arm was torn open with a large gash. 180! Zhou Shen hastily retreated, trying to stall for time until the effects of Lin Jichen's elixir wore off. But his speed was no match for Lin Jichen, who caught up in a few steps, and the Crimson Cloud sword haunted him like a ghost. Zhou Shen began to suffer consecutive hits. How the tables had turned in 30 years. Their situations were completely reversed. Zhou Shen was forced to defend with all his might, positioning his blade in front to block as much of Lin Jichen's sword momentum as possible. Unfortunately, although Lin Jichen lacked any sword techniques or ultimate skills, his sword strikes were tricky and rare. Lin Jichen was like a hero with only basic attacks and no skills, but it was precisely these simple attacks that Zhou Shen struggled to parry. The speed and angle of Lin Jichen's sword left Zhou Shen with no defense. Zhou Shen was forced to protect his head and heart, leaving the rest of his body to fend for itself. He hoped to outlast Lin Jichen's elixir with his thicker pool of vitality. Lin Jichen understood his opponent's mindset and thus quickened his sword strikes with each attack. Zhou Shen's wounds multiplied, blood covering his body, turning him into a blood-soaked figure. Seeing Zhou Shen in such a state, His younger brother Zhou Hao knew he couldn't let his brother die, or he would face the same fate. "Brother, I'll help you." Zhou Hao, enduring severe pain and clinging to life, charged forward and swung his blade at Lin Jichen. Forced to break his attack rhythm by Zhou Hao, Lin Jichen turned to face the new threat. Zhou Hao was no match for Lin Jichen even on a good day, especially not against Lin Jichen, who had consumed the elixir. With an effortless sword strike, Lin Jichen sliced open Zhou Hao's abdomen. 355. A terrifying amount of damage exploded forth, and that wasn't even a critical hit. Zhou Hao, already low on vitality, was cut open and killed instantly. "Brother, avenge me." Zhou Hao collapsed, his eyes dimming rapidly as life left him. Ding. Cultivation +0. You've reached a bottleneck. Please break through as soon as possible. Ding. Hell difficulty mission completed. Please return to the sect to claim your reward. After Zhou Hao's death, a storage bag burst forth, but Lin Jichen had no time to pick it up as he turned to see Zhou Shen, grief-stricken and enraged by his brother's death. While Zhou Hao had bought him time, Zhou Shen had started to channel a spell, pouring all his spiritual power into his blade. In a moment, Zhou Shen's blade underwent a strange transformation, turning fiery red with flames engulfing the blade, dripping like molten lava, resembling flowing blood. Zhou Shen's aura changed drastically, as if he were a demon returned from hell, his gaze fixed on Lin Jichen, the flames from his blade reflecting in his pupils. For a moment, he truly seemed like a demon returned from purgatory. "I will take your life to mourn my brother." With a roar like a wild beast, Zhou Shen's blade expanded dozens of times in size, the flames engulfing the entire forest, startling countless birds and beasts. 100 fierce flame slash. A stunning streak of fiery red flashed across the sky, and what met Lin Jichen was not just color. The blade was chillingly sharp, the flames volcanic, carrying an unstoppable force as it bore down on Lin Jichen. Lin Jichen could clearly feel the air around him heating up, but what truly alarmed him was the imminent strike of the blade. Unfortunately, the spirit shield was still cooling down. Lin Jichen had no choice but to brace for the attack. At the last moment, he used his sword to block, but the power of the spirit skill was too great, sending Lin Jichen flying, sword and all. Lin Jichen was like a kite with its string cut, flung several meters away. Pooh! A mist of blood sprayed out. A terrifying scar appeared on Lin Jichen's body. 1089. Such was the power of a spirit skill. It had nearly cost Lin Jichen his life. Spirit skills were abilities that only those in the Foundation establishment realm and above could wield. Lin Jichen, still in the Qi refining realm, could only look on enviously. He didn't even have a single sword technique, and fighting against a Foundation establishment cultivator with a spirit skill, it was no wonder he was being overpowered. Lin Jichen glanced at his vitality bar, a mere few hundred points remaining, while his opponent still had 2,000. But Lin Jichen was not disheartened. He rose from the ground, his eyes blazing with fighting spirit. Zhou Shen couldn't believe that Lin Jichen had survived his ultimate technique. Was it normal for someone in the Qi refining realm to have such thick vitality? While he was still in shock, Lin Jichen was already swiftly advancing. In terms of attributes, Zhou Shen was still no match for Lin Jichen, whose elixir effects had yet to fade. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Shen was caught up by Lin Jichen, who raised the crimson cloud sword in his hand. Zhou Shen inwardly cursed his luck, forced once again into a defensive shell, desperately resisting. This time, Lin Jichen's attacks were faster and more cunning. Amidst Zhou Shen's frantic defense, his wounds increased. Lin Jichen, however, seemed to be grasping the essence of swordsmanship amidst the battle, his strikes growing sharper. Ding, insight into sword intent during battle, swordsmanship aptitude +5%. Chapter 29. After claiming his spoils of battle, Lin Jichen returned to Fengqu City, ready to report back to his sect. Suddenly, he remembered something. It was his first time carrying out a mission for the sect. Perhaps he should buy a gift for the sect master. Even though he knew Leng Feiyan lacked for nothing, there was wisdom in the old saying, "It's the thought that counts." It was a matter of showing the right attitude, especially in this traditional world. Respecting one's teachers and valuing their teachings was essential. With that in mind, Lin Jichen dashed into the city, picked up a few mundane gifts, and then stepped through the teleportation gate back to the Tianyan Sword Sect. The number of players at the Tianyan Sword Sect had increased, with unfamiliar faces all around the outer temple. Lin Jichen went straight to the mission board where he had previously accepted his task and handed in his mission token. The disciple in charge of missions was still very enthusiastic towards Lin Jichen. "Junior brother Lin, you've finally seen the light. Giving up on the mission is the wisest choice. Do you need me to pick an easier task for you?" Lin Jichen shook his head and said, "You misunderstand, brother. I'm here to turn in my mission." With that, a sheepskin scroll appeared before him. The mission-handling disciple was so surprised that his eyes bulged, and he was left speechless. The surrounding players, curious about the commotion, crowded around to see the token in Lin Jichen's hand. On that token, there were 5 small sword symbols, signifying a hell-level difficulty. Damn, this buddy completed a hell-level mission. That's impossible, right? You need at least to be at the later stage of chi refining for a hell-level mission. Exactly. I struggled so much with just a difficult mission that I wanted to jump off a building. It took me 2 whole days with a friend's help to complete it. What's that scroll in his hand? Could it be? The mission item? Zhu. The players were in an uproar, but the mission-handling disciple was too busy to attend to them and repeatedly confirmed with Lin Jichen. "Junior brother, did you really avenge Zhang Hai and retrieve the lost secret technique of our sect?" Lin Jichen nodded. "Of course." "What was the cultivation of the person you faced?" "Qi refining, later stage." Lin Jichen didn't bother to mention Zhou Shen's affairs. It was important to keep a low profile. The mission-handling disciple's eyes flashed with surprise once more, but he quickly understood. After all, Lin Jichen was a disciple of the Inner Temple, the most outstanding disciples of the sect. Such a feat of defeating an opponent of a higher level was rare, but not unheard of among these talented disciples. "Junior brother is truly an elite of the Inner Temple. I am ashamed in comparison. Given time, your future is boundless. I wish you great martial fortune." Impressed by Lin Jichen's prowess, the mission-handling disciple immediately started to flatter him, his words filled with the intent to befriend. The surrounding players also came to believe the fact that this incredibly handsome male player had completed a hell-level mission. Their feelings were complex. While everyone else was still stuck on simple or normal missions, someone had conquered a hell-level task. Envy, jealousy, confusion, admiration, and disbelief. Various emotions played across their faces. Lin Jichen ignored their expressions and politely thanked the mission-handling disciple, saying, "Brother, I have other matters to attend to. Could you please process my mission rewards?" The mission-handling disciple replied awkwardly, "Hell-level mission rewards are distributed by the Elder in charge of affairs. Please be patient, junior brother. I will send for the Elder right away." "Thank you for your trouble." The mission-handling disciple immediately instructed a nearby junior brother to fetch the Elder. With many players still waiting to accept missions, the mission-handling disciple couldn't blatantly waste everyone's time and had to proceed with registering tasks for other players. As soon as the disciple left, Lin Jichen was surrounded by a crowd of players. "Buddy, you're pretty impressive, being able to complete a hell-level mission. What's your cultivation level now?" "Brother, do you have a guild? If not, join our Kanglan guild." "Handsome, you're so powerful. Can you take me under your wing? My name is Princess Chao, and I'm quite pretty." Lin Jichen became like a panda at a zoo, the center of everyone's attention, with various attempts to strike up a conversation. Seeing that Lin Jichen wasn't responding, some with ulterior motives began to threaten. "Kid, don't act so aloof. If you don't agree to join, don't blame us for blocking you." Lin Jichen was about to respond to these types of players who liked to bully others in the game when the Elder in charge of affairs arrived. Seeing the elder, the players became much more subdued. After all, this elder was known for being strict, unemotional, and fond of teaching new players a lesson. All the players who had received the sect's newcomer package from the elder had experienced his severity firsthand. They secretly nicknamed him Old Stoneface because no one had ever seen him smile. Which disciple completed the hell-level task? Old Stoneface approached the crowd, his expression as stern as ever. Everyone was too intimidated to make a sound. Lin Jichen stepped forward and replied, "Elder, it was I." Old Stoneface saw Lin Jichen, and the next second, his face bloomed into a smile like an old chrysanthemum. "So it's Lin Jichen. I should have guessed who could complete a hell-level task. Ha ha ha, worthy of being the only disciple taken in by the sect master. I always said the sect master wouldn't accept a mediocre student." At these words, the mission area fell silent. The sect master's disciple? And the only one? This couldn't be real. They must be dreaming. The players were like statues, unable to digest this information. They even forgot the miraculous sight of Old Stoneface smiling, their minds overwhelmed by the shocking news of the sect master's disciple. Lin Jichen hadn't expected the elder to reveal his identity, but it didn't matter. It was bound to come out sooner or later. "Elder, you flatter me. I was just lucky." Such modesty made the elder regard Lin Jichen even more highly. No need to be so humble. Being appreciated by the sect leader is both your honor and a testament to your own excellence. Here are your mission rewards. The elder handed several items to Lin Jichen: 100 low-grade spirit stones, a token, an elixir, a secret manual, and a pair of boots. Just the sight of those 100 spirit stones was enough to make all the players envious to the point of drooling. The average player currently possessed no more than a double-digit number of spirit stones, and most sect mission rewards were in single digits. As for the token, many players recognized it as an item that recorded sect contribution points. Some eagle-eyed players noticed the token read 100 points. They couldn't help but complain that it would take them at least 10 missions to earn that many contribution points. The remaining elixir, secret manual, and boots were undoubtedly valuable items. Before the players could take a closer look, Lin Jichen pocketed the rewards, politely thanked the elder, and quickly left everyone's sight. Many players wanted to follow Lin Jichen and ride his coattails, but they found that he had gone straight through the outer temple and into the inner areas. The gatekeeping disciples didn't stop him. Instead, they respectfully let him pass. As for them, dream on. If they dared to take a step inside, they'd face severe sect punishment. Lin Jichen had left, but the shock he left behind among the outer temple players lingered. My God, it's only the second day of the open beta, and someone has already become the sect master's disciple. That's outrageous. More than outrageous. It's off the charts. This guy must be the game company's godson, right? I refuse to accept this. I'm going to report it. There's a bug in the game. This person must have exploited a bug to become the sect master's disciple. I heard the elder say his name is Lin Jichen. Wait, isn't he the Lin Jichen mentioned in the first day's game announcement? The guy who took down the novice village's big boss? Damn, it might really be him. Chapter 30. Upon returning to the Sword Palace, tranquility immediately enveloped the surroundings, free from any further disturbances. Lin Jichen heaved a sigh of relief, thankful for his status as an inner temple disciple. Otherwise, he'd be swarmed by people every day, which would drive him to distraction. The Sword Palace was deserted at this hour. Assuming the sect master had retired for the night, Lin Jichen planned to return to his quarters and wait for dawn. Unexpectedly, Leng Feiyan appeared at the head of the Grand Hall, her presence unnoticed until now. Today, Leng Feiyan's attire was different from the daytime. She was clad in a pale aqua robe, draped with a white gauze outer garment, revealing her gracefully curved neck and clearly defined collarbones. Even the loose-fitting robe couldn't conceal her impressive figure beneath. The skirt's pleats, like snow bathed in moonlight, flowed to the ground, trailing over 3 feet behind her, shedding some of her usual aloofness for a touch of grace. Radiant as peach and plum blossoms, yet as cold as frost. These words perfectly captured Leng Feiyan at this moment. In her, two extreme temperaments coexisted without clashing, blending allure with chill to create a captivating beauty. Disciple, I've heard you completed a hell-level mission. Leng Feiyan's voice remained as melodious as ever, like an oriole singing in the valley, a kite calling, a phoenix crying. Lin Jichen answered honestly, "Yes, master." Rather than praise, Leng Feiyan's tone turned stern. "I only instructed you to choose a difficult mission. Why risk a hell-level one? Do you realize the peril? A failure could mean death and the end of your Tao. The loss of a genius like you would be a blow to our sword sect." Lin Jichen was taken aback, realizing that although Leng Feiyan spoke of the sect's interests, she was also concerned for him. He promptly admitted his fault. "Disciple acknowledges the mistake. Master's reprimand is just." Leng Feiyan nodded slightly, clearly satisfied with Lin Jichen's attitude. She then inquired, "How was the cultivation of your opponent on this mission?" "Beyond my expectations. I initially thought the adversary would at most possess qi refining cultivation, but..." Lin Jichen recounted the situation with Zhou Hao and Zhou Shen. Leng Feiyan's beautiful eyes sparkled with interest upon hearing the details. "You battled a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator and ultimately turned the tables, defeating them single-handedly." Disciple wouldn't dare lie. "Of course, it was mainly thanks to the elixir Master gave me. Without it, I certainly wouldn't have succeeded." Leng Feiyan nodded repeatedly, her gaze on Lin Jichen growing more appreciative. She was certain of Lin Jichen's combat talent, as outstanding as his natural aptitude. Such an exceptional talent was truly once in a millennium. The gap between major realms is vast. Take this as a warning, and do not act recklessly in the future. Disciple will bear it in mind. Leng Feiyan hesitated for a moment, seemingly still worried. With a gesture, she sent a talisman paper flying towards Lin Jichen. "You are the most talented disciple of our sect. For safety, keep this talisman. Use it only in a life-or-death crisis, not for trivial matters." Lin Jichen hadn't expected this bonus, and quickly grasped the talisman in his hand. Soul Talisman. Seals a strand of Leng Feiyan's soul, and can only be used once. Not applicable in player-versus-player combat. Wow! Lin Jichen was overjoyed. With this talisman, he no longer feared losing innate attributes upon death. This talisman was like having the sect master backing him up, giving him confidence in everything he did. This was the advantage of being a sect master's disciple. What a powerful ally to cling to. Furthermore, for completing the mission, here is the superior gathering chi pill I promised you. Seeing that you've completed a hell-level task, I will gift you another superior gathering chi pill to aid you in breaking through the later stages of chi refining. 2 elixirs flew into Lin Jichen's hands. The night seemed brighter to Lin Jichen than a sunny day. Superior gathering. Chi pill. Plus 130 free attribute points. Helps chi refining cultivators at the initial stage break through stagnation and advance to the middle stage. Requirements. Only chi. Refining cultivators at the initial stage and at a bottleneck can consume it. Superior gathering chi pill. Plus 40 free attribute points. Helps chi refining cultivators at the middle stage break through stagnation and advance to the later stage. Requirements. Only chi. Refining cultivators at the later stage and at a bottleneck can consume it. Worthy of being superior elixirs. Lin Jichen laughed heartily in his mind. He had never seen or consumed such superior elixirs in his many years of playing Tale of Immortal before his rebirth. The most common gathering chi pill only added 10 attribute points, followed by medium quality at 15 points and high quality at 20 points. A superior gathering chi pill could add a whopping 30 points. Of course, it wasn't a plus 30 to all attributes, but a total of 30 free attribute points to distribute as one wished. With these 2 elixirs, Lin Jichen wouldn't have to worry about cultivation stagnation or wasting experience during the qi refining stage. After distributing the rewards, Leng Feiyan showed no intention of staying longer. What you lack now is sword techniques. I haven't collected any for the qi refining realm, but our scripture repository has them. You can exchange for them yourself. With that, Leng Feiyan's figure began to blur, and just as she was about to disappear... Master, wait. What is it? Leng Feiyan returned to her seat, her expression puzzled. Lin Jichen took out a white jade and gold hairpin from his storage ring, smiling sheepishly. Disciple ventured out of the sect for a mission for the first time and wanted to bring back a gift for Master. Lacking enough spirit stones for a spiritual hairpin or pearl, I could only afford a mundane one. It seemed pretty, so I bought it as a gift for Master. I'm not sure if Master will like it. Leng Feiyan was momentarily stunned by the hairpin in Lin Jichen's hand. She hadn't expected Lin Jichen to buy her a gift. In Tale of Immortal, unless NPCs were close relatives or friends, giving gifts between individuals of the opposite sex usually had a clear implication, akin to a confession. Leng Feiyan, the dignified sect master of Tianyan Sword Sect and a renowned sword god's successor in the Tale of Immortal, commanded respect from leaders of sects across all 4 states. Everyone knew of Leng Feiyan's icy demeanor, as untouchable as a snowy mountain peak, and that angering her would have dire consequences. Who would dare to give her personal gifts without cause? At most, they would offer gifts to the Tianyan Sword Sect in the name of their own sects. Such a personal, non-familial gift was unprecedented for Leng Feiyan. Hence, the gift left her somewhat astonished, her usually pale complexion showing a hint of unease. Clearly, Leng Feiyan had misinterpreted the gesture, but it wasn't her fault. Such was the custom in the Tale of Immortal. Leng Feiyan was ready to refuse without a second thought. However, seeing Lin Jichen's clear and guilt-free eyes, she thought she might have overreacted. Besides, she couldn't bring herself to refuse, fearing it would hurt Lin Jichen's pride. She didn't want him to think she looked down on his gift. The white jade and gold hairpin was indeed beautiful. After a moment's hesitation, Leng Feiyan summoned the hairpin to her hand with a flick of her sleeve. Holding the hairpin, Leng Feiyan could even feel the residual warmth from Lin Jichen's hands, which made her even more uncomfortable. I accept your gift. Continue to cultivate diligently, and do not slacken. With that, Leng Feiyan departed completely. Ding. Leng Feiyan's affection level towards you has increased by 5. Current affection level, 10 points, acquaintance. The gift was a success, and Lin Jichen chuckled to himself. How could he not know the implications of giving a gift to someone of the opposite sex in Tale of Immortal? He simply had a weak stomach and wanted to be a gigolo. Was there a problem?
No problem.
Was it shameful? Not at all. Back in her quarters, Leng Feiyan sat in front of a spiritual fur table. The white jade and gold hairpin lay at the center of the table, and she had been staring at it for half an hour. After much deliberation, she finally picked it up and adorned herself with it. I'm just not wanting to waste my disciple's thoughtfulness. And besides, it's been a long time since I've added new jewelry for myself. Yes, that's it.